So, is now the time to get back into the World of Warcraft. We've just had the launch of Battle for Azeroth, which is World of Warcraft's 7th expansion. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun. And for people who dropped out during Legion, dropped out during WoW, or at some point in the past, is Battle for Azeroth the time to get back into World of Warcraft? Well, in the nature of skin in the game, my own experience is probably the best testimony. I am playing Battle for Azeroth right now. Those of you who know me from my other channel know I'm a big fan of vanilla and may be shocked to know that I'm playing retail WoW, but I think you can get a lot out of it if you go into it with the correct mindset and with the correct set of expectations. I talk often about expectations. You might also know that I played the Legion beta, and based on my experience in the Legion beta, I decided not to play that expansion. This is coming after Warlords of Draenor, which was probably the most disappointing set of content that had ever come out in World of Warcraft. Now, I came back in actually at the end of Legion, and if you were going to do any sort of play strategy that involved you taking time away from the game for long periods, months or years, I would say you should play at the beginning of an expansion and play at the end of the expansion. There's a lot of hype that goes on at the beginning of the expansion. People are rushing up to max level, getting gear. All the content's new and fresh, and you haven't been burned down on it. Somewhere in the middle, the content coming in is a little bit slowed, and you're still doing a lot of the older content. It can get a little bit old. But once you come in at the end of the expansion, you have all the new stuff that you may have missed from the middle. And that's what I did with Legion. So I came in at the end of Legion. I really enjoyed the end of Legion. I thought Legion had the weakest beginning to any expansion that I've played, and one of the strongest endings. Now, Battle for Azeroth actually has the strongest opening of any expansion I've played in a number of years, and there's lots of reasons for that. Mainly it comes at the strength of the content itself. The dungeons are fun to play, the quests are pretty fun to do, there's great stories that are going on in both the Horde and the Alliance zones, there's great cinematics. Blizzard's actually put together a whole bunch of cinematics that you can watch on YouTube that kind of hype up what they're doing in Battle for Azeroth. The gear looks great, the classes feel good, there's more class fantasy that's been brought back in since Legion, and all of that stuff feels really good, so the hype is very real. There's an abundance of things to do, even though they haven't come out with the first raid, which I think is coming in September, even though Mythic Plus dungeons are not out. There's a lot of activity. There's a huge amount of stuff that you can work on and do. You're not really going to feel bored at the beginning of this expansion. Whether that feeling is going to persist through that middle of the expansion and towards the end, I'm not entirely sure, but the opening is certainly good, and I am actually playing it. Now, I want to take it back and make a comparison for you old school players, you players that really have a lot of affection for Burning Crusade, Vanilla, Wrath of the Lich King. And let's look at these two versions of the game, because there's been a lot more emphasis over the past however many years, really since Wrath of the Lich King, on the nature of the content versus the systems. And I'll talk more in depth about this idea, not just in terms of World of Warcraft, but gaming in general, systems versus content. Content is things like story. Systems, those are the things that you use to access the story in an RPG. So it would be the attacks that your character does, what abilities are there, how stats work. The systems have gotten watered down over the years in World of Warcraft. They've been simplified, quote, streamlined, but really they've been watered down so they're less complex. However, the content has gotten a lot better. And in Battle for Azeroth, I think the quests, the stories that go with each zone are probably the best sets of content I've seen in a long time, probably since Mists of Pandaria. And for that reason, I think it's probably pretty good to jump into it, as long as you don't have the expectation that you're going to get that deep experience from vanilla. The emergent gameplay that was so compelling during those older expansions really can't come back without the systems being changed to be a lot stiffer, a lot more complex, and honestly a lot more restrictive to the people that want to play the game. Having to farm out resist gear naturally reduces the ability for a larger player base to, quote, access the content, to see the story, to participate in the raid on some level. So Blizzard has emphasized the content, the stories, rather than the systems for a number of years now. And if you go into the expansion with that in mind, then it's going to be a good experience. That being said, they're offering more and more ways to have a deeper, more challenging experience in World of Warcraft. There's Mythic Plus dungeons, which, like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3, allow you to attempt a greater and greater challenge with greater and greater rewards. That's a very interesting avenue. Of course, there's Mythic Dungeons. There's also still going to be some of the same problems that we had from past expansions, namely that in any given time frame, you have people working on 4 different difficulties of one raid, if you're into the raiding game. You have the Raid Finder, the Normal, Heroic, Mythic. And so whatever current tier is active, there's very few people who do the older versions of the raids simply because it's more efficient and you get better gear for doing, normal of the new raid versus heroic of the old raid. And then so you end up going from normal to heroic to mythic in one raid tier. And to me, that gets a little bit old and a little bit uninteresting. I'm hoping to raid very casually, so that will reduce some of that problem for me. I have trouble raiding casually, and I have in the past, and then doing in free time trying to do more Mythic Plus dungeons and challenge myself that way. So there is a lot of depth there if you're looking for it. There's also some depth that may surprise some of you and may appeal to those of you who are into games like EverQuest or into old school EverQuest, which is there's hidden quests. There's a number of hidden quests, and there's Discord servers that are committed to discovering how these hidden quests work and finding hidden items. The latest one I've seen is a special waist piece with a clock on it. It's called the Waste of Time, and it's got a very secret quest that goes along with it. But just the inclusion of some of that rather deep content is very, very appealing to me. Likewise, as a rogue, I decided to play rogue for this expansion, which I've played in some expansions in the past. I'm able to actually interact with the world as a rogue again. So I can pick a chest or pick a lock rather than killing an NPC to get a key to open a chest to complete a quest. I can sap him or pickpocket the key or pick the lock and complete the quest that way and skip steps. That's part of a class fantasy that I really enjoy. I can pick locks in dungeons again. That's really, really appealing to me that kind of stuff is included. So that to me is a sign that World of Warcraft is actually going in the right direction. I think towards the beginning of Legion, they had been going in what I consider the wrong direction. At some point, they course corrected. The end of Legion with the Argus patch ended up being quite a bit of fun, and I'm having a lot of fun in BFA. So if you're looking to access quality stories, you're looking to see really, really beautiful zones. In fact, I would say that aesthetically, this is the best version of World of Warcraft and has the most visual appeal since Mists of Pandaria, which had a lot of great visual appeal. If you're playing in Kul Tiras, if you're playing Alliance, I think the aesthetics, while they're really beautiful, don't quite match what we're used to seeing with World of Warcraft and the medieval approach they have towards armor and architecture. Nonetheless, it's so beautiful to look at. It's so fun to interact with that I don't really mind the fact that it doesn't quite fit in with what's typical with World of Warcraft. Likewise, they've also improved the contrast between night and day. Nighttime, when you're out in Drustvar, which is one of the new zones where there's a big story involving witches, it's quite atmospheric. It really, really works well. And during the day, it's also creepy and gray. It's kind of the new Duskwood. The contrast between night and day, which had been lessened at some point in World of Warcraft, is now back. Nighttime feels dark, and the lighting effects in the cities are very, very strong and profound. Daytime, by contrast, feels bright, almost happy. And there are even things that you can only access during day and night, which gives the world a lot more of a living, breathing feel. Now, onto War Mode. War Mode is the new PvE, PvP mode that's been introduced with Battle for Azeroth. They've gotten rid of PvP servers, so there's no more PvP servers. The way a PvP server was supposed to work is you opted into being on the PvP server when you created a character, thus you couldn't escape the combat. Now what we have is a modification of the way PvE servers worked for everyone. You turn on War Mode, which means you turn on PvP in, say, Stormwind or Orgrimmar in a major city, and then you can't turn it off once you're out in the world, or you can't wait for your tag to drop the way that you could in a former PvE server. But if you don't enjoy that, you can always go back and switch back to PvE mode. And a lot of people have wanted this change. I leveled War Mode and I really enjoyed it. It definitely slowed me down, not because I was getting ganked, but because I couldn't resist fighting and ganking other people, particularly as a rogue, where you're so powerful in the open world and you have so many options for how you can defeat an enemy. It was really a lot of fun to level as War Mode, and it felt like an older PvP server. It felt like I was back PvPing in vanilla, that everyone was there to PvP, everyone was down with how that conflict was going to work, and the scaling that's been introduced since Legion helps that a lot. So if you're level 111 and you turn on War Mode, you're going to be able to kill 120s. In fact, it might be easier if you're coming in with the gear from Legion because of the way the scaling works. My character was more powerful at 111, 112 than my character is at 120. That being said, I still have War Mode on at max level because I just enjoy the excitement of having other players try to kill me and me having the opportunity to kill other players. Even if the rewards are not that great, I find the experience itself so enjoyable, I haven't turned it off yet. That being said, PvP is still mostly an impersonal affair compared to how it was in vanilla in particular, where you knew the people that you were fighting because of the insular nature of servers and the fact that you couldn't really escape the conflict. And indeed, that's one of the bigger problems with Battle for Azeroth, and has been a problem with the game since they introduced really the Dungeon Finder. The lack of personal interface that you have with other people, the inability to create social connections, the lack of responsibility and skin in the game that people have towards each other makes for a community that can be toxic at times. So the best thing that you could do if you were to jump back in is to try to find a community of like-minded people. It's more difficult, it's less organic than it used to be, but if you can do that and you can create a walled garden, if you will, that keeps some of the random people out, then the social experience is probably likely to be a lot more fun. But if you're just queuing in with randoms, you may find the experience to be a little bit annoying, let's say, because of the nature of other people. When they don't have any social consequences to what they do, they say and they do things that are annoying, unkind, and not productive to whatever goals you have in the game. So there you have it. There's my initial analysis and assessment of Battle for Azeroth, World of Warcraft. I'm having a great time playing right now, but I am playing with people that I've played with for over 10 years, and it's a great social experience for me. Let me know what you think down below. What's your opinion of Battle for Azeroth? Will you be playing it? Are you playing it now? Are you enjoying it? Are you going to pass? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.